Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for the webinar, Product Safety and Integrity, the Foundation for Brand Protection, an Investor and Expert Perspective, Volume 1. My name's Amy, and I'm a member of the marketing team at Perry Johnson Registrar's Food Safety, Inc. I'll be helping facilitate today's session and offering technical support to our speakers. We're very excited to have two very special guests joining us, and they'll be introduced to you all a little bit later into the presentation. Just before we get started, there's a few housekeeping notes I want to take care of. To ensure audio quality, all attendees on the call are muted, but we do absolutely want to take all of your questions. So please use the questions tab on the GoToWebinar control panel to type your questions in, and we'll try to respond to as many of them as possible at the conclusion of the discussion. The most frequent questions we see are usually whether the slides will be available for download and whether we're recording the session. And the answer is yes to both. The slides and a recording of the webinar will be available from www.pjrfsi.com within the next 24 to 48 hours. So as I mentioned, if you have questions throughout or you just want a little more clarification, the questions tab will open up just like that. You can type in your question and send it over to our end, and we will respond to as many as we have time for. And just to get us started, I wanted to ask everyone a quick polling question, just so we know who's on the call, what kind of perspectives you all have. And the first question is, how is product safety and compliance viewed in your organizations? So just choose whatever response works best for you, is closest to your experience. And I'll leave this open for a few seconds while we get some responses in. So go ahead and vote as you see fit. And your questions are open to be submitted at any point throughout the webinar, so you don't have to wait until the end to submit them. So just as you think of them, type them right in and send them over. We're happy to take them. All right, we've got about 55% participation. Let's see a few more votes in before I close the poll, and then we'll see how you all responded. Polling responses are anonymous during the webinar, so feel free to share your opinions and thoughts freely. All right. And here's what everyone thought so far. We had about 60% participation, so thank you to everyone who voted on this poll. And now that that's that, I would like to go on and introduce our first speaker today, and that is our very own Paul Meron. He's the Senior Vice President of Food Safety and Supply Chain at PJRFSI. Paul joined us back in January, and he has over 35 years of experience in the hospitality, service, and retail agri-food sectors. Before he came to PJRFSI, Paul worked for 15 years in the certification industry and had clients in every sector from food safety, supply chain, brand protection and quality, automotive, aerospace, medical, and information technology. Before he worked in the certification industry, Paul was a professional chef and a consultant for over 20 years, and he worked in major hotel chains, restaurants, private golf courses, and food service organizations. So without further ado, I'm going to hand things over to Paul. And Paul, you can take it away when you're ready.
Great. Thank you very much, Amy. I appreciate that. Welcome, everyone, to the webinar. Thank you so much for attending. We really appreciate your time today. As Amy mentioned, my name is Paul, and I work with Perry Johnson Registrar's Food Safety, or PJRFSI. I'll just call us FSI today for short. And today I'm very excited about this session. We're going to be discussing with Nishat and Tina how to create brand equity and credibility through having strong integrity and regulatory frameworks that are sustainable for both short-term and long-term return on investment, as well as return on credibility. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that as well. So we're also going to be discussing the importance of engaging with the right people, the right expertise at the right time, and how to leverage that foundation for creating differentiation in the marketplace. Just before I do, I'm just going to talk for about a minute, just to give you a quick overview of our organization. We were originally founded in 1994 by Perry L. Johnson. We've been at the forefront of international certification and registration from the very beginning. We have many global accreditations around the world. So in other words, we're recognized in various countries around the world. We achieved our ANAB accreditation in 1995, and then since then have been expanding overseas, everywhere from Japan to Brazil and Portugal, Spain, Canada, Latin America, Thailand, just to name a few. We also achieved our UCAS accreditation during that time. In 2005, PJNA was formed, and that was is a healthcare technology company who specializes in transcription, medical coding, telemedicine, virtual scribing services, etc. And after that, in 2012, is when PJRFSI was born as a result for the demand of certification in the industry for food safety standards and schemes. We're headquartered in Troy, Michigan, but we're really a global company. We currently oversee and support standards, to many different global schemes, everything from HACCP to GFSI, organic, gluten-free, cannabis and hemp, social responsibility, many government-related audits like FSVP or the FSMA program. We have offices in about 20 countries around the world. We have auditors on the ground in about 60 countries, and we have about 450 assessors globally. So just to talk for a second here about our services, and then we're going to get right into it. We break our services out into 4 key areas: auditing and certification to accredited standards such as all of the ISO standards, as well as all of the GFSI schemes and standards like SQF or BRC, FSSC, etc. We have a lot of standards that we've written and developed as well globally. These are referred to as second-party standards. Those would be like our good manufacturing practices or good distribution, HACCP, etc. Then we also do a lot of work with our clients and their global supply chains to conduct audits or risk assessments for their suppliers around the world. And those are generally 2 standards that the specifier or our customer would have written themselves, but they're looking for us to conduct those audits. So we work with companies in virtually every sector across the industry: production, processing, distribution, and many, many others. We're really in business to help our clients manage risk within their business, as well as their supply chain, and protect their brand and mitigate risk within their company. So as Perry himself did over 30 years ago, we apply the principles of quality management in everything that we do, whether that's in the field or in the office. We meet the requirements of the global standards associations and accreditation bodies. I think that's all I'm going to talk about today. So without further ado, I am going to pass this back to Amy just to do our second polling question, and then we'll get into the session.
Great, thanks so much, Paul. As Paul said, we're going to move into another polling question really quick before we introduce our guests for today. And that next question has to do with, what's your experience been in working with senior leadership in companies? Maybe they're very knowledgeable about product safety and quality, and they're very supportive of such programs. Maybe they're not so knowledgeable, but they respect the need of the business. Maybe they look at it as a cost of doing business and they only engage if necessary. Or maybe they think of it as something that's too much of a headache, it's a roadblock. So as I said before, all responses to the polling during the webinar are anonymous, so don't worry about sharing your opinion, however that may tend. And for anyone who came in late, if you have any questions during the upcoming discussion, please go ahead and type those into the questions tab on the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So we've got about 55% responding, so let's get a few more votes in there, and we will move right along and introduce our guests. All right. Thank you to everybody who responded. Let's just see how you all voted. And it looks like there's a definite strong trend towards at least people you've worked with tend to be respectful or understand the need of product safety and quality, which is great. All right, so I'm going to hand things back over to Paul to introduce our first speakers.
Thanks very much, Amy. Yeah, that poll was actually quite interesting with those results. Okay, so at this time, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce you to 2 leading executives in our industry. They're both very well known, as you'll soon find out, and they're going to be sharing their time and expertise with us in a roundtable discussion about product safety and integrity, which is really the foundation for brand protection. And this will be discussed today through an investor and expert perspective. This is volume 1 of 2 in our series, and volume 2 will be held on September 30th. I am going to give a very short intro of our guests today, and then following that, Tina and Swot will speak for a few minutes about their backgrounds, and then we're going to go right into the roundtable. So first of all, let me introduce you to Tina Sharkey. Tina, as you can see here from many of the logos on the screen, has driven innovation in media, commerce, and community for more than 2 decades, and has been pioneering the development and adoption of pivotal consumer brands and platforms that bring data and technology together. She's a C-suite executive, entrepreneur, investor, and change agent, and she's created, led, and scaled global brands and businesses that have really transformed the way that we communicate, shop, and share. So Tina, on the screen now is a short overview of your accomplishments. I know I speak for everyone when we'd love to hear a little bit more from you in terms of your journey to date and what you've been doing post-Brandless.
Thank you, Paul, and thanks, Nishat. It's great to be here because, you know, as Nishat and I will unpack later, in building any kind of a company, especially in the CPG space, I'm thinking about the integrity of your products and how they go to market and how they end up in people's lives and in their homes and often in their bodies and their mouths is the most important thing, first and foremost. So I really appreciate the privilege to be able to share our story with you today, and I love the poll responses because clearly it's a priority for everyone on this call. In terms of what I've been doing post-Brandless, oh my gosh, well, it's been busy, but I have had the opportunity to step back and from operating day to day, and I really wanted to see how could I really make the greatest impact on something that is so close and dear to my heart, and that is public media, because, you know, I believe that organizations like PBS, where I joined the board back in March, you know, PBS has become America's classroom, especially in these unprecedented times when we are all sort of, you know, treading water in terms of how we are in our homes and how the pandemic has, you know, halted our normal society movements, and they'll never be going back to the old ways. We're looking towards the next normal. And so PBS really is one of the pillars of in my opinion, of our democracy. And it is the most trusted brand, even in the country, beyond any government agency or other brand that you might think of. PBS is the #1 most trusted brand. And I believe it is an institution that is, you know, in its 50th year this year. And as Ken Burns said, if he comes back in 50 years and PBS is still thriving, he'll know our democracy is still intact. So I've been spending a lot of time with that extraordinary organization who's really become America's classroom in this crazy time. I'm also have been very involved with Ipsy, which is the world's largest beauty community and commerce platform. And so, you know, as a COVID silver lining, you know, buying and engaging in beauty and care online versus in physical stores has really been on the rise, and the Ipsy community is thriving. And so it's been a privilege to sit around their table and be of counsel to that team as they continue to scale and grow. And I've been very active on the teaching and lecturing at USC and at other schools where I like to really teach the concept of how the community playbook for brands and businesses, thinking about strategy and design, and thinking about growth and resilience. And then I've been investing in early stage startups. I really try and support female entrepreneurs and businesses that I believe in. And so I've made a few investments in companies that are really remarkable. One is Stride Funding, that is a leader in the ISA space. ISA are income share agreements. So rather than students graduating with monkeys on their back and huge loan debts, they invest in your future career, and that's how you pay it off. A great entrepreneur, Tess Michaels, out of Harvard Business School. I've invested in Rafter, which Sue Decker, the former CFO of Yahoo and on the board of Berkshire Hathaway and Costco and other great companies, started a community platform for clubs and schools. Another company, Local Labs, which is a stealth company, April Underwood, who's had a product at Slack and Twitter. And then something that everybody on this call may want to follow on Instagram called Thing Testing, Jenny Glendahl, I met her, and she curates stories about direct-to-consumer brands. So she's basically the consumer reports for the millennial generation. And so I've been very involved in those companies and in coaching early stage entrepreneurs, and really working on allyship and how I can shine on those people who don't have the access, don't have the networks, and don't have the experience, but have extraordinary ideas, incredible training. I'm working right now with 2 Black scientists out of University of Michigan working on plant-based hair for braids and all of that, and disrupting that market into a more sustainable product and service. So really trying to lift others, and I do a lot of coaching of entrepreneurs out of Stanford Business School as well. So yeah, it's been busy, but really trying to give back and to fuel the next generation of great businesses and great leaders.
Yeah, that's amazing, Tina. You know, we're really honored to have you on the call here today. You know, your career is absolutely incredible, building and operating, you know, a consumer product company named Brandless, scaling Johnson & Johnson's baby center to become the largest in the world. You oversaw the defining transition of AOL from a closed network to an open web, and served as president of the renowned Sesame Street Digital Group. What a career you've had. So now I would like to, yeah, no worries. Thank you very much. So at this point now, let's introduce Nishat. I've known Nishat for many, many years. I've had the pleasure of working alongside her as well. Nishat is the president and founder of JIT Experts Hive. Nishat, would you mind telling us a little bit more about your company? You have a very unique value proposition that I think many people on the call here today will want to hear about.
Hi, Paul. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here. Thank you for setting up this webinar. And Tina, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your priceless perspective and experience. As you're seeing on the slide, I've been in the consumer products industry for more than 25 years, working in different size companies, from startups to global corporations, in different parts in supply chain, manufacturing, retail, and e-commerce. And one of the things that I've learned over the years, Paul, is that regardless of the size and the type of the industry, as a company grows, their needs change. You know, they go into new product categories, different consumer segments, different geographies, and as such, they would need different expertise at different times. Usually companies address this by hiring, which is great if the need is long-term and the company can afford it, or many times through finding, you know, consultants or third parties to help them. What I saw as a common challenge in many companies when looking for the expertise they needed was, first, finding hands-on experts, people who have grown in trenches, knew all the up and downs, and could provide real practical solutions, versus, with all due respect, a lot of consulting companies come and can create great presentation, but not necessarily hands-on and practical solutions. Second challenge was bring the expert or experts that they wanted at the right time and in the right way. For example, at Brandless, when Tina came and said, we're going to go into baby category, and we have close to 6 months. And one of those was diapers, and I didn't have expertise in diapers, so we had to bring in experts who were experts in designing diapers, but also I had to bring experts to help us do claim substantiation, because we were making eco-friendly diapers in very high quality, and bringing all these different experts at the right time and integrating it within our product launch process was very interesting, to make sure that we leverage their knowledge and time, but also don't waste any money and cause redundancies. And third was to know exactly what to expect from these experts as you were bringing them on. What is it that you wanted them to do? When do you wanted them to do, and how? So looking back at Brandless, where we were starting everything from scratch and expanding so quickly into new product categories, I think one of the reasons we could do that was because we knew where to go, find the hands-on experts we needed, bring them at the right time in the right way. And that's what, you know, toward the end of Brandless, this was in my head, the idea of JIT Experts Hive, or Just-in-Time Experts Hive. Basically, JIT Expertside is a network of hands-on consumer products experts dedicated to helping CPG companies succeed. We provide practical, proven solutions and advice based on years of experience. Our mission is to activate and accelerate the growth in CPG companies by connecting the innovation to knowledge, and to bring like-minded companies and experts together and create a win-win situation. We work with different kinds of companies, regardless of their size, whoever wants to be agile and innovative. We also work with brand incubators, accelerators, and investors, the ones who want to make better investment decisions. And our experts have a broad range of expertise in consumer products good, from food, beverage, supplements, CBD, pet, cosmetics, a whole bunch of household categories. And our expertise really flexes with our clients' needs, from product development to project management to accelerate commercialization, from product quality and safety to supply chain sustainability, responsible sourcing. One of my expert friends joke that we are the Match.com of CPG industry. So with that, I want to thank you again, Paul and Tina, and turn it over to Amy for the next, I think, polling question, if I'm not mistaken.
You are not mistaken. Like Nishat mentioned, we have one more polling question before we get to our roundtable discussion. And that has to do with what difficulties you may have faced in the past implementing product safety and compliance programs. So just choose, as I said before, whatever option suits you best. Responses are anonymous. And once this is complete, we'll get right into the discussion with Tina and Nishat. All right, we've got lots of answers coming in. We'll look for just a few more before we close the poll so we can jump right into the body of today's webinar. All right, thank you to everybody who voted, and here's how everyone responded. So it looks like a nice mix of reasons why people have met roadblocks in implementation. So some food for thought as we head into this discussion. And just a reminder as we get started with that, that if you have questions or want some more elaboration, if there's something mentioned that maybe you're not familiar with, please go ahead and type a question right into that questions tab. We would love to have some further discussion in the Q&A. So Paul, I'll hand it back to you and we'll get started with the fireside chat.
That's great. Thank you, Amy. Wonderful. The response there, you know, it's interesting, but over the last 10 years, it always seemed to me to be senior level leadership support of your initiatives were always one of the largest challenges. So I'm actually happy to see that that's reduced. Okay, so with that, let's jump right in and get to our roundtable discussion here. So, you know, brand equity, brand credibility, integrity, sustainability, these are all top of mind and extremely important in today's business world, maybe now more than ever. And gaining executive leadership support of this is really no small task, so talking about that. So Tina, if you don't mind, I'd like to start off with a question for you. What would be your advice for product safety and integrity experts or leaders on how to better engage with leadership and gain their support?
So what I would say to that is, I think it's very important to think about, like any company, household, or human, thinking about scenario planning. And sometimes it's very helpful to do fire drills around crisis communications and what the scenarios of, you know, when everything is good, it's all good. But when things go bad, they go bad fast. And I think in today's world where the delta between the time that things go awry and the time that it hits social channels, viral channels, and news media and can actually impact companies is, you know, a nanosecond. And so I think it's really important for anyone in the PSQI kind of lane and leadership to really facilitate a scenario planning around crisis communications. What would we do if? How would we respond when? How do we think about this? And then to engage the cross-functional leaders within the organization to make sure that they have a best practice on what can happen if things don't go as planned. And I feel that that's one of the best tactics to actually get leadership engaged, because you're doing a simulation of what could happen if things don't go as planned. And, you know, there's the expression, you know, we plan and, you know, the world laughs. And I think we're living through that right now. And so I think it's important to understand how to facilitate that. And I think it's also important because simulations engage cross-functional leaders in the communications areas, in the C-suite areas, and across organizations. It's a way to build cross-functional support and to find the weak links in the chain, and then to use that as an opportunity for C-suite leaders to actually have conversations with their boards when they're doing budget planning, conversations with their general counsel, conversations with their communications team, et cetera, et cetera. So I have found that that is a great shortcut to gaining people's attention, because it's a great way to sort of, you know, road test, are we ready?
Okay, that's great. I really appreciate that, the input, Tina. Nishat, over to you now. You've been a senior leader in the industry for many years as well, and staying on the same overarching theme today about brand equity and credibility from a product safety and quality perspective, but also from a building block perspective. What would you say have been some of your biggest challenges when leading product safety and integrity programs?
As we saw in the polling question, how is product safety and compliance viewed in your organization? We know there are still a lot of companies, more than 50% per the polls that we've got, that still view, you know, product safety and integrity functions as cost of doing business and just needed to meet minimum regulatory requirements, and they don't see much ROI other than keeping companies out of trouble. Now, I was very lucky when I started, and that was the reason I went to Brandless, was that their view and the leaders like Tina's view was completely different. However, in any company, large or small, that I worked, the first and foremost challenge that for me was to change or create a more valuable and positive image in the organization. But even more importantly, change the mindset of my own team on what our function could and should bring to the table. Because we know that to be successful in our job, we need true buy-in and belief from our leadership. And because that's when it turns into decisions to provide the financial and other organizational supports that we need. Now, in product safety and quality, when we need support, we usually present our case within the context of risk and the importance of prevention, which is absolutely critical. And as you heard from Tina, our business leaders agree with and actually want it. But in most cases, when faced with competing priorities and choices, most of the time we've also seen that the resources go to the growth initiatives versus risk prevention initiatives. And that's not because our executives don't care about preventing risk, rather it's because it's how human brain is programmed. Tina was talking about PBS. It's my absolutely favorite. We are on PBS all the time. Last week I was watching a PBS program called Hacking Your Mind, which was about the factors that impact the decision making in humans. And the conclusion was that our decisions are mostly impacted by positive results versus fear of negative consequences. For example, in one research, they shared information on a new surgery treatment with two groups of doctors. Group A, they shared that this treatment, with this treatment, there was a 10% fatality risk. With the group B, they shared that this treatment has a survival rate of 90%. Afterwards, they asked doctors in each group whether they would recommend this new treatment to their patients. And most doctors in group A said they wouldn't. And doctors in group B mostly said they would. It was exactly the same information, 10% fatality versus 90% survival, but presented in two different ways, which impacted the way our brains make decisions. This brings back to what Tina said, engagement and communication with our business leaders and our partners, cross-functional partners. Business leaders' decisions, like most people, are more impacted by positive results, and AKA growth initiatives versus risk prevention. So in my mind, it's very important for us not to only focus on risk, which is, I mean, we focus on risk, we assess based on risk, but when we are communicating, we definitely need to communicate the opportunity. When you think about it, it's not that difficult. A lot of things we do in product safety and integrity teams is the same processes and systems that's there to prevent risk can also create a lot of opportunities. Think about it: safety, quality, traceability, transparency, supply chain compliance, responsible sourcing. Basically, it's like the two sides of the same coin. For example, imagine if you're going to ask for money or resources to implement a new traceability system to minimize the risk. If you communicate it as a transparency opportunity at the same time, that is a word that resonates with customers and business leaders, and the chances that you're going to get positive decisions and responses is much higher. Again, same systems and processes with a little extra effort can capture information that takes us from traceability, which is important to us in food safety and quality, and turn it into a brand differentiator, to transparency, which is a brand differentiator and what customers care for. So my advice is, as you're assessing the risk, challenge yourself to see what is the mirror image opportunity that is embedded in it, and draft and deliver your message based on opportunity as much as risk. And also, as we are developing and delivering programs, always see what opportunity, what additional value, more than risk prevention, we can bring into the equation.
That's great, Nishat. Thank you so much for that. Tina, another question for you. Now, when you started Brandless in the beginning, what made you think about needing a product safety or integrity expert and their various functions? I mean, you know, a lot of startups don't even know that such a function exists or is needed. Why did you think it was necessary?
Well, when we started Brandless, we really were not anti-brand. We were not a generic brand. We were reimagining what it meant to be a brand, one that was built alongside the community we existed to serve, one that really put people first and really thought about how do we create something that is completely transparent, disruptive, and built on love, built on like the best intentions, and building products that are better for you and better for the world at large. And so with that focus, we knew that the quality of our products, the quality of our ingredients, the quality of the experience and the efficaciousness of the products, they had to be better. And so therefore, the brand equity, the company equity, the experience of building all of that was so dependent upon our ability to deliver phenomenal products at fair and reasonable prices. And so putting a product safety, quality, and integrity best practice in from day one was really as much about building the brand and as much about building the quality and letting that our consumers, who we didn't even call our consumers, they were our people, they were our community, know how much we cared about them and the things that we were selling them for themselves and for their families and for their homes, and that they were better products at fair and reasonable prices. And so the only way we could do that with our heads high was to make sure that we were delivering a formulation of crisis communications, but more importantly, using PSQI as a foundational element of how we built the company and how we were able to move and scale so quickly, because the combination and teamwork between our merchants who went out and created these extraordinary products, and our team in the PSQI side under Nishat's leadership, and then our engineering and tech teams and marketing teams who were able to storytell and build digital experiences around those products, they all had to work together, and they needed to have the information, the confidence, the transparency, and the claims that enabled them to tell those stories with transparency and authenticity, because that was part of our promise to our community from day one. And so I saw that as a fundamental sort of, if you think of it like a pyramid, like a base of the pyramid. It was not something that we did later, not something we wanted to do in reaction, but we wanted to do it as part of the building process. And so it was integral to how we thought about everything.
That's actually very interesting. Do you feel, Tina, that your expectations, understanding, or even perception changed over time?
Expectations and perceptions of what exactly?
You were talking about, you know, setting up the various programs, and I'm just wondering if the approach that you laid down in the beginning, if that changed over time, your expectations of the team or of the product at all.
No, I would say, you know, when you're building a company like a CPG company with such breadth and scale and scope so quickly, you have to have very high performing, highly functional teams that are multidisciplinary and cross-disciplinary. And people have to learn to respect other people's points of view, because diversity and inclusion is not just about people's backgrounds, people's race or ethnicity or orientations. It's also about the diversity of voices and letting people be informed. And so I feel like we were building very high functioning cross teams that were getting schooled in each other's expertise, in the same way that, and Nishat can go deeper into the story, but as laws in California, for example, were changing around the disclosures around certain things, around certain products, but that wasn't changing in other states. You know, her relationship with our engineering team on how to deploy that and when to deploy that and how to prioritize that in the engineering and technology and commerce site roadmap was a critical touch point. Or when talking to the people who were leading our distribution centers and thinking about product and safety in the context of our warehouses, not just in the context of what was in the warehouses, those teams had to be cross-functional. So I think that part of my intention was to really build those cross-functional codependencies in a really positive way, so that everyone was, you know, rowing together with a great respect for each other's kind of domain expertise, but knowing that it was only through this cross-functional collaboration were we going to be able to move at the speed and with the flawless execution that that we signed up for.
Well, that's amazing. Nishat, I remember when the day that, you know, we were talking when you first decided that you were going to Brandless, and it was an exciting new company that you wanted to be a part of. Can you tell us a little bit more about what motivated you to join the company in the first place? Are you there, Nishat? You might be on mute.
Oh, sorry. I was talking, but I was muted. I just said that, you know, I guess you got the audience got the answer listening to Tina. I mean, just the sincerity and passion and the vision that she had. But just to tell you the story, when I was reached out by an ex-Target leader who has left Target to work with Tina and her co-founder to start Brandless. She told me about the concept, asked me if I were interested in joining them. My first thought was like, it's a fascinating concept, but most probably the founders were some entrepreneurs who didn't have much business background and really didn't know what they were getting themselves into it. And then my ex-Target, my friend, asked me to go on a 3-day offsite and meet the founders and the very small team that was put together between Minneapolis and San Francisco. And you heard, Tina, that's what I heard and saw when I was on that offsite. I was so impressed by the passion, the integrity, the business knowledge of the founders and the team. And the thing that really impacted me was the sincerity and conviction with which Tina and her co-founder were discussing how important it was to have this strong foundation, to live by the promise of better for you, better for the environment, which was the core message of Brandless. And I have to say this to you, Tina, when I joined your team, and your actions and your support proved that those were not empty words. and I'm glad that I made that choice.
Well, I'm blushing through the audio.
Well, Tina, you know, I know you talked about it as Paul asked that question, but can you talk a little bit about how the decision that you made, like having this strong foundation as an important cornerstone of your vision, what was its role on the quick rise of Brandless?
The role of, just to clarify, because I want to make sure I answer the question, the role of product safety and integrity, or which role in particular?
Exactly. The role of creating a foundation of a team and programs to build this safety, quality, and integrity into the products. What was its role in the rise of Brandless?
Oh, it was, yeah. I mean, it was like, it would be the equivalent of, you know, making a, I don't know, a recipe without like the core ingredient. You know, the cake's not going to rise without the flour. So I would say that there was not even a question that this wasn't an option. It was foundational. It's like building a house without a foundation, or building, you know, like I said, or making a cake without flour, although there are flours cakes, but you get the point. So I would say that the role was foundational. The role was critical, which is why we brought you on before we brought on, you know, many of our team members. You were like the core team. You were a founding teammate, because we wanted your expertise, your wisdom, your presence, and your poise, and your counsel to not only make sure that as we went to pursue and create these great products, but also as we brought on cross-functional teammates, that people that never had the privilege to work with someone with your expertise, that you also were a mentor to those people, because I think that the only way that you can scale and grow an organization is to turn all of your leaders into mentors, and to use the opportunity in context of meetings and conversations and decisions to mentor cross-functional teammates to the opportunities and objectives of what the larger goals of the organization are. Because for many people on the team who were engineers or social media managers or you know, designers or art directors or marketing people, they'd never had the privilege to meet someone like you with your expertise. And I felt that everyone came to Brandless not only for the experience of starting the company and believing in the mission and believing in the movement, but also to be part of something that was bigger than any individual employee, and not to be just slotted into, you know, their lane, but also to learn and be inspired by, because the only way to scale an organization is to make sure that the narrative, the integrity, the mission, the vision is held by everybody, and that the team schools the future teammates. They help recruit the future teammates. They help onboard those teammates, and they make sure that everybody has that same understanding. And so, you know, we even created with our people teams, as you know, sort of onboarding for all new teammates. And, you know, I said the first and most important onboarding class that everyone, no matter what job they have, I don't care if they're a database engineer or a designer, or they work in the distribution centers or a customer service rep, they need to understand the parameters around product safety, quality, and integrity, because it's such a foundational part of the brand and our commitment to our community.
Tina, that's great, and thanks, Nishat, on that for the follow-up question. Tina, again, I have another question for you. As an executive and business leader today, facing, you know, competing priorities and different functions and people asking for the same resources, whether that's money, headcount, what were some of the factors that impacted those decisions? You know, I mean, as an example, take a marketing project with potential quick ROI versus investing in a product quality or safety software without having immediate return. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think it's really important to be able to, I mean, there can't be too many goals and too many, let's call it targets for an organization and a team, because it's very hard when everybody is, has their pet project or the thing that they care about. You have to find a way to ladder up to shared goals and have people feel that they have impact on those shared goals, because the success of the organization is not the success of one project or one person or one priority, but it's the collective success of the organization. And what are the things that are going to move the needle the most? But if in fact you are moving the needle the most, right? So you're acquiring the most customers, or you're converting the most people, et cetera, et cetera. What are you converting them to? What are you acquiring them for? Well, it's to buy and engage with the products and the services of the organization. So like I say, compromising on product integrity, it's not a priority because it's not optional. It's not a project. It's just like saying, is it a priority for your house to have electricity? Or are you is it more important to like cook dinner, or to, you wouldn't say, well, wait a second, what do you mean? Like, I didn't know that I had to prioritize electricity. That's just how my house runs. So I'd say that I look at certain things as steady state, and then certain things as growth initiatives, or, company priorities that could be shifting from quarter to quarter, depending upon what you're trying to achieve. But compromising on foundational things would be the equivalent of compromising on, do we want to have water? Do we want to have our garbage picked up? Do we want to have, our electricity work? I don't think anybody would compromise on those things, because they're just how we function in our modern society. And what we've seen, and I'm calling in from California, from Northern California, what happens, with the fires and with the air quality, what happens when the things, or even with the blackouts, what happens when those things that are foundational go away? Everything stops to go and resuscitate the foundational things, and all the other priorities become deprioritized. So that's why, keeping this as a foundational box checking, not just for the purposes of checking in the box, but for saying, if our products are not good, if our products don't live up to the standards, if our distribution partners don't house our products in the way that they need to be housed, then nothing else matters, because then there's nothing, because I live around the first and giving them that. So, I see it as foundational, more like a utility. Did I lose you?
No, we're here.
Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Oh, got it. Sorry. So yes, so that is how I think about it.
Right. No, that's amazing. Thank you very much for that, Tina. Nishat, just coming back to you for a moment. Now, you've been in senior leadership ever since I've known you, and you've really helped, pave the way for many of us. But can you speak for a moment about the role of a product safety leader? There's many things right now that I'm sure you need to consider when building an effective model. For example, budget, capabilities, priorities. How have you approached that in the past? And could you speak to the importance of engaging with the right people at the right time with the right expertise, and how you leverage that to create differentiation in the market?
Yes, Tina is an amazing leader and very supportive. And I usually, when I went to her to get support for any initiative, I would get it. And I was privileged with really good leaders, business leaders in my other companies. But the key here is the prioritization and key initiative. We did the poll, and there was the 20% that say we're not sure where to start. Some said lack of resources, don't have enough budget, lack of management support, and quite a few said all of the above. So my one-word answer is planning. It reminds me of Thomas Edison when he said, good fortune is what happens when opportunity meets planning. So planning, you need to plan to identify the goals and the resources that you need. Obviously, you can't do this planning alone. You need the right experts in your team, in the organization, even externally, to help you do that, to identify, your highest priorities and, come up with a roadmap. Going back to planning, I always recommend using, well-proven strategies or methodologies. One of the great tools that I've used is called Swot, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you have heard about it or have even participated in Swot analysis sessions. It helps identify the good and bad things about the business function, both from an internal and external viewpoint, by identifying strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's used very extensively by business leaders to develop winning business strategies, but unfortunately, I haven't seen it used that frequently by functional leaders. And in my opinion, that's a great miss, because this methodology can really help us identify risk and opportunities, define our SMART plans and goals, which in turn then help a functional leader decide what kind of resources they need, expertise, headcount, systems, processes, budget, and so on. The critical factor, as you mentioned, is who you engage with when using this methodology, because it's their knowledge and experience that help identify risk and opportunities, and more importantly, the right strategies to address them. I always include my team members in this analysis, but also invite partners from other functions. As Tina mentioned, we cannot operate by ourselves. Every business that you go to is a cross-functional operation. So make sure that you invite partners from other functions to bring different perspective, and then invite external partners to participate and help. Again, if you're missing some expertise internally, don't be shy, bring it in. The result, if it's done right, is truly a roadmap for success. And there's one challenge, however, whenever I use the SWOT, or initially when I was using it, is that most of the SWOTs come with questions to trigger brainstorming. And most of those questions are very financial and marketing oriented. So if any one of you goes out to check the SWOT, you might be a little bit thinking about how these questions apply to you. So what I've done over the years, I've customized this approach to work for different functions that I've had led, including one of these for product safety and quality teams, which I call SWOT for safety. Now, if you're interested, you can text me or email me, and I would be more than happy to share this tool with you.
That's great information, Nishat. Thank you very much. Just before we get to the Q&A, I want to pose one final question to you, Tina, if I may. As an entrepreneur, I'm sure that you get presented with many wonderful ideas and opportunities. When you're assessing the viability of a brand or a product in the consumer product industry, how would you assess the credibility of a brand or a product's promise? Has your experience with brandless changed the way you assess a product or a brand in the future?
So, when I look as an investor, in early stage companies, the first and most important thing that I assess is the founders, because you're never going to get to the place you want to get to, or the company says they're going to get to, the way they think they're going to get there, because that's just the nature of the beast, right? Things change, the environment changes, their assumptions change, etc. So I'm really looking for founders who are facile, founders who know how to attract great talent and build talent around them, either through advisory boards or investors or teammates or, whatever. But that first and foremost, I'm investing in the founders, because I know that the company that I'm investing in at that moment is probably not going to deploy the product that they think they're going to deploy, because things change. The second thing is I look at what's called the TAM, which is the total addressable market. How big is the TAM for this particular product, service, company, etc. And then the third thing I look at is what I call the moats. So the moats mean if this company is, all the first two boxes are checked, it's a big enough market opportunity, and the founders I believe in, and the team they're attracting I believe in, can they build a moat around them so they're not just building a commodity product, which is just an also-ran, that maybe it's a huge market, but is it really a market that is in line for disruption? Is it a market that is sleepy and, a technology or a digital solution, or a market or a company or product suite that is, ready for innovation and disruption. And if this company can deploy those things, can they build a successful moat around it such that they're not just going to be innovating and copycatted off? And then when I look at those three things, founders, size of the market, moats available, and then the talent they're attracting around it, then I analyze the product itself, and does the product live up to what I believe is where we are, like I said earlier, the next normal. Not the do we go back, we're only moving forward. And so I like to invest in things that are, better for you, but also better for the world at large. And so those are sustainable solutions. Those are solutions that scale. Those are solutions that are kind to the planet and kind to your body. And those are solutions that are affordable and accessible to more people than is otherwise been affordable or accessible before. And they are also, finally, products or services that have the potential to build a community around them. Because I believe that communities are the new playbook for brands and businesses. They are not just, it's not just an afterthought. It's not just something that that is a nice to have. I believe it is a foundational part of how brands and businesses create authentic engagement with the people they exist to serve. And it's a differentiator, even if you are distributed through channel. It's still a way to have direct communication with your audience, to listen, to spotlight the people in your community, to share their stories and to share your story. And don't just go to them when you have a story to tell, like when you're launching a new product, but go to them on a regular basis to build that authentic connection and to listen to their thoughts, their insights, their feedback, because so much of what you want to know about your early product or your next product or your new innovation or your competitors, your community will tell you just organically, because that's what they're doing there. And so I think it's very important to have a community mindset, regardless of whether you're building for enterprise, you're building direct to consumer, or you're distributing through channel. So those are some of the filters that I use when evaluating an opportunity.
That's amazing and absolutely key information, Tina. Thank you very much for that. So now we're going to move into our open Q&A. I'm going to ask Amy that we just bypass our last polling question to save more time for Q&A. So again, Tina and Nishat, thank you so much, and I can't wait to hear the questions. So I'll pass it back to you, Amy, to moderate. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Quick mention before we head into the Q&A, there is a full list of upcoming webinars on the PJRFSI website under the webinars tab, so please go ahead and check those out. And as Nishat had mentioned, you can go ahead and text that number right up on the screen to get some more information on the JIT Expert Hive, as Nishat mentioned. So get those questions in. We had some great discussion with a lot of really interesting points brought up. And it looks like we have a question here from Shirley for Tina. Tina asks, what do you feel are the best ways to assess brand equity?
So thank you, Shirley. So I think that brand equity, and if you're really looking for a true brand equity assessment, I would recommend Dr. David Acker, A-A-K-E-R. He is the Grandmaster Flash of marketing and brand, and he's really credited. He's a professor out of Cal Berkeley, and has been, lauded as probably the leading thought leader on inventing how do you actually measure brand equity. And there's probably 40 books that he's written, if not more. And if you take a marketing class, undergraduate or graduate, you would for sure have one of his textbooks, if not more. So small shout out for Dr. David Acker. His daughter, Dr. Jennifer Acker, is a remarkable professor out of Stanford GSD. But David is really the guy who has put a lot of qualitative and more importantly quantitative ways in which to measure that equity. Having said that, I really use NPS, Net Promoter Score, as one of the metrics for brand equity. because I feel like you can benchmark it on a regular basis and look at the feedback, both positive and negative. Because I think that today, a brand is not what you or your company says about itself, it's what a friend tells a friend. And so in thinking about how does that narrative get passed, you know, what is the architecture of your narrative such that it gets passed in authentic and real ways. And so NPS is a great way to kind of pulse that. And I use that a lot as a way to think about that. I also use, back to community, I use a lot of social measuring tools to look at sentiment analysis and other things. And I do that not only for the brands that I'm building, but also the competitive set. So looking at sentiment analysis there. But I would say that there's an entire science around measuring brand equity, and I would recommend that you tap into Dr. David Acker's, some of his teachings and thought leadership and curriculum around, and books around it.
Great, thanks so much, Tina. It looks like there's a question here from Alice, and this one I think could go for either Tina or Nishat, so chime in, either of you, if you have input. This person is looking for some recommendations on how to possibly appeal to upper management who's reluctant to invest in more robust product safety initiatives. So maybe some background, an example that you might suggest.
So Nishat, I'll let you take that because you were great at it. Happy to chime in anytime.
Okay, thank you so much. You know, going back to what Tina was saying, like, for example, NPS, one of the things that I think a lot of us in product safety and quality deal with is customer complaint. And we always look at it as just like a fixing situation. Whereas that data, the whole customer contact information, if you look at it as an umbrella of like the feedback, the positive, the negative, obviously you have to fix it, as well as the compliments, how you can take that data and then put it in a system into designing new products and opportunities. And we use that extensively. And we also looked, as Tina was, when we were at Brandless, we were, as Tina mentioned, we were using NPS. And yes, a lot of those went back to our marketing and stuff like that, but a lot of those were result of the feedback or the emotions around our products. So we gathered all that information, and that helped me get the buy-in to set up the product specification system. It was a high capital investment, both from a resource perspective and money, but I put it in the context of how it can move some of these metrics that were very important to measure our success and the engagement of our customers with us. Another example I've shared was the transparency versus traceability. And this is an example that one famous coffee shop company is using right now. They've used their traceability system to gather more information from the supply chain, including the coffee that you're drinking, which farm and farmer it's coming from, and you can tip that farmer directly as you drink your coffee. So turning the traceability, which is a must-have, very foundational system and program in a food safety or product safety, into transparency, where now you're creating that brand differentiation, are always messages or ways to engage with the executives who might not necessarily motivated by just preventing risk.
Great, thanks so much, Nishat. I know we're running a little bit over time, but I'm going to squeeze in one more question. This one's from Jason. What first steps would you recommend for a company that has either not really had a structured approach to product safety and integrity or is just getting started?
I would say planning and assessment. So this, as I mentioned, one example is SWOT analysis, is just that if you're only yourself, and I've been in companies when I was the first one and I had to do this with my me, myself, and I, or I had a team, but I always engage with other partners, assess, use some systematic approach to assess what's going on inside the company, outside the company, always think about what's the company strategy for growth and how you can align your businesses there, your own goals there. And then once you assess, you come up with a list of all the things to do. And then in the tool that I can share with you guys, if you text me, I have a way of prioritizing based on impact and complexity. Again, you may come up with 100 things that you need to do. Where do I start first is about prioritization. There are different ways you can prioritize. I've provided a very simple matrix for prioritization. And once you prioritize is discipline. It's just that don't get diverted, focus on it, but from time to time, as things change, go back to your plan and see if you need to change priorities or bring in something new. And it's like a cycle. Always be on it.
Great. Thank you so much. I think we're going to wrap things up here. Any parting thoughts from any of our speakers before we end the session?
I just want to say on behalf of Perry Johnson, Registrar's Food Safety, thank you very much, Tina and Nishat, for your time. It's been a real honor having you, and I hope our listeners got as much out of it as I did today. So thank you so much for your time.
Our pleasure. I just want to say thank you, everybody. Wear a mask, stay safe, and vote. Tell your friends and family to do so as well.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, great. Thank you all so much, everyone who attended. As I mentioned at the beginning, a recording of the webinar and the slides should be available within the next 24 to 48 hours from PJRFSI.com. If you can't find it, give us a call, send us an email, and we'd be happy to help you out. So as Tina mentioned, stay safe, stay healthy out there, and we'll see you all in the next webinar. Have a great day.